following is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Wylie High School or the Wylie Independent School District. It is the independent expression of its author. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Wylie Football Weekly, the only podcast dedicated to your Wylie Pirates varsity football team. I am your host, the one and only Wylie superfan Pappy, and as a reminder, Wylie Football Weekly is a proud sponsor of the Wylie Pirate Pace Setters, Pirate Cheer, That Wylie Band, and the varsity football team. Before I go any further, I don't usually do this every episode, but let me plug that we have a store. You can buy the official Wylie Football Weekly t-shirt. You can also buy a mug. I'd love it if you're at all inclined. Get that t-shirt, wear it to games, let more people know about our show, what we're doing here. You know, if it's not clear after the first few weeks for some of you that are new listeners, our goal here is really to develop more hardcore fans of the program, right? People who are just into it, know everything about it inside and out. And, I just think that it's a lot more fun to follow this team and this program when you are actually following it week to week and kind of understand and see the things that are going on, see the evolution, see the progress. So we have a store. It is at Zazzle.com. I've got the link in the show notes. Check that out. We did get a purchase a couple of weeks ago. Someone did buy the shirt. Thank you so much. Please, if you don't mind, wear it to games. We'd love to have people know about the show. People might think you're me. You have to tell them that you're way cooler and less nerdier than me, but I think they'll live. Let's get to some quick corrections here. First of all, on the last unplanned episode, the yellow number 14 that we referred to, that's quarterback Logan Shaftstall, the Southpaw Slinger. He's currently engrossed in a QB battle with this team for QB2 Varsity. And it looks like that's between him and another quarterback, the other junior, Ernesto Gonzalez. Good luck to both of them. I think one thing I want to point out is I think that there's some sense if you're either of those quarterbacks and you really want to be the starter next year, because next year Blake's gone, he's graduated, and we're gonna have an open competition for QB1 in the 2027 season, and it might behoove you to actually want to be down in JV, get a full year of starts, and then openly compete next year. Because, if you want to look at an example of a backup quarterback, we've got last year Mason Griner, and he was a senior, but he really didn't get playing time even when we had the game where Blake was injured and we needed someone else to start. They did not go to Mason Griner. So, it's sort of, do you want to just sit around in your junior year being a backup on varsity and really not playing? Or do you want to be down in JV, get a full year of starts, get those reps, even as JV, first team JV reps, play a full schedule, and then next year you got a shot to be the guy, at least for your senior year. So something to think about. Another correction, number 9 for this year. I mentioned last week and in this unplanned episode, the numbers are changing here and there, and still don't have a grasp on this year's numbers. But number 9 that we saw that was playing tight end, that's actually Chase Kirby. Okay, and I think Archer Leggett has switched over to number 3. Good for him. The number 24 that we talked about is Khalil Washington. So, Khalil, we were really impressed by you in that scrimmage. And then I believe Demarcus Mathis Jr. is number 6, and actually it was Jimmy Strickland who really impressed us in the scrimmage at number 10. No surprise there because Jimmy Strickland is also, as we mentioned, an FBS DB with an offer to Arkansas State. One other quick note, uh, we mentioned that there's been turnover in the coaching staff. And one of the things is that the coaching staff has a new wide receivers coach, Coach Pierce. And I'm hearing reports that he is really engaged and a really engaging presence, I should say. Very high energy. Apparently the only coach that actually wears cleats on the field. Runs around all over the field. Seems like he's really hands-on and intense with his coaching, and I'm looking forward to seeing that and seeing that translate into better wide receiver play, better route running, better blocking too from wide receivers. Before we get to the season preview, which this is my favorite episode because I love to kind of go through the entire season, talk briefly about all the opponents and give some predictions. Before we get there, I've got a couple ideas regarding Private Aiden Craig, who we talked about last week, in terms of honoring him. Now, if the team doesn't do these ideas, that's fine, but I think this is a good time to incept them. But keeping in mind, I understand that he had already graduated, so he wasn't going to actually play this year, obviously, because wasn't in high school anymore. But for me, I'm just telling you personally, I'd love either the first game, right, which is the August 28th game at JJ Pearce, or better yet, the home opener, week 3, September 10th, home against Mesquite Horn. I don't know. I would love the following, right, where the coach gets on the horn with the opposing side and tells them, hey, we want to do this thing on our first play when you guys have the ball, when Wiley's on defense. And it kind of goes like this, right? And the idea is when it's Wylie on defense for the first time, Wylie sends out only 10 people, right? And specifically the defensive line, only 2 people instead of the normal 3, right? Honoring Private Craig. And the idea is that the other side would they would not actually snap the ball, but they would line up there, and everybody kind of takes a moment of silence as the play clock runs down. Before the play clock expires, Wiley actually goes ahead and burns a timeout. And then, we have like an ovation or something, and then then Wiley sends in the 11th person. Maybe the PA makes an announcement. That's why I kind of like it at home, right? PA makes an announcement there. We of us fans and even the opposing fans in this case, the ideal scenario, Mesquite Horn, everybody gets to honor Private Craig. And then we actually resume play. And yeah, Wiley burns a timeout. So what? Burn it for Aiden. And I that's worth it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you've probably seen similar things to that in like NFL or in college. A lot of times, if it was on defense, the team will run a play, right? The team they'll let the offense they'll actually play. They'll play one man down. I don't like that. I don't like the game actually being impacted, other than burning the timeout. But I think to have that thing where you go out, you have 10 men. Everybody on the field and in the stands sees the empty spot that will always be there on that D line. Then Wiley calls the timeout. They burn their timeout. We get some announcement from the PA. We have this, remembrance moment. And then they send in the 11th person, and then we play as normal. So it's just an idea. I want to throw it out there. I don't know how much coaching staff really listens to this, but if any of you are listening out there and that idea resonates with you, let the coaching staff know. Let them know, for all that we throw out there and we criticize, the coaching staff, they're all fundamentally decent people. And I like to think that Coach Carter would really be behind that idea. So just want to throw that out there. I'm putting it out in the ether. If you like it, take it. Let the coaches know. Before we get to the season preview that you're waiting for, we do have a scrimmage coming up this Thursday, the final scrimmage at McKinney Boyd. We do know that scrimmage will start at 5:30 p.m. So Thursday, August 20th at the campus of McKinney Boyd High School, 5:30 the ninth and the JV, freshmen, 7 p.m. varsity. So a little bit later than the Wylie scrimmage. 5:30 freshman JV, 7 p.m. varsity. So definitely check that out. That's your final chance to see the Pirates before they actually start the actual first game on August 28th. McKinney Boyd, last season they were 1-9. Their only win was a 49-9 blowout of North Garland. But as we've mentioned several times before, went back and forth with Wylie East before Storms called the game. So, we're in a position where we never know what would have happened if that entire game had played. It's potential blemish to Wylie East's perfect season last year. And frankly, I think it's deserving of the asterisk because the game was never finished. And technically, the coaches agreed that the game wouldn't count. But then Boyd allowed Max Preps to show it as a loss, which then the Wylie East coaching staff kind of ran with. So, it is what it is. On offense for McKinney Boyd, big time. I like the receiver, Timothy Karsholt, 10 TDs last year. He's pretty good. I think they've got a new starting running back this year, Caden Washington. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Boyd, they're really high on their quarterback, junior Major Smith. That's a cool name. Major Smith. Last year, almost 1,000 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 6'2", 175 pounds, good build. Defense, they've got a bunch of starters back, but if you're watching this game, the scrimmage, check out the nose tackle, Jason Stevens. I like him. And also the linebackers, Ugo Anosike, check him out. He was, I think, first team all district in 6-6A last year. And then got DB, Kalen Gunther. I think it's Gunther. I'm thinking, I see Gunter and I think Gunther from WWE. But Kalen Gunther just loves to throw hits big time. Just throw them around. Check him out. Otherwise, again, like we've said before, not too much to watch in terms of the opponents. We really want to just watch Wylie, right? For this final scrimmage, this tune-up, the final sort of position battles, one of those being backup quarterback, right? So let's just stop there with that. And let's get to the season preview. I'm really excited to do this. This is one of the most fun episodes for me to record. Let's start with caveats here, right? And the caveats are that this is with limited information on the opponents, right? We don't know everything about these opponents. We'll know more as we go into the season, right? Because I'll be able to do sort of more research and be able to even see game footage of these teams when they play games before getting to their game against Wylie. And then we even have some limited information for Wylie, right? But a lot of this is based on two different things. One is really the things that we know about the makeup of the Wylie Pirates. And keep in mind, we're going to do a team preview. And that'll come sometime in the next 2 weeks after the team announces the official varsity roster. But for now, we know we've got Blake at quarterback, your athletic freak, who is going to be a defensive back at the FBS level. You've got your running back, your 4-star recruit, committed to Texas State, Dalen Gordon. You've got a good receiving core in guys like Samuel Kwaye, Archer Leggett, Chase Kirby, which now we talked about Chase Kirby playing tight end. I like that. Offensive line, I feel very good about the left side. Armando Rodriguez, Teslim Busari. It's the center and the right side that are still up in the air, but I will say that they threw out there in that first team scrimmage against Princeton. They look good, and they were snapping the ball good because that's something that is so important at the high school level, which is having a center who can snap the ball properly. On defense, like we said, the big strength is that secondary. Chase Grandy, Jimmy Strickland, DeMarcus Mathis Jr., and Donnie Skinner. Probably the best secondary that Wylie's, throwing out there in, let's just say decades. If somebody wants to make a case that there was a starting four that was better, let me know. But I don't think so. I don't think that, because when we, like I said, at the end of the year, we're going to have all four are going to be FBS guys. FBS, they're going to be FBS offerees, if not commits, like Demarcus Mathis committed to Air Force. And I don't think we've ever had that. I don't think the Wylie Pirates have ever had it. But then, when it comes to D line and linebackers, I think there's questions on how solid of a unit it's going to be. We're going to be looking to guys like Obey Ajayi and Kalen Wara, Anthony Quarles to kind of lead the way in that front seven. So that's the first part, right? Is we're using what we know about with those guys and our general idea of the team. And then two is the X factor. And the X factor is the team being fueled by the recent tragedy regarding Private Aiden Craig. Sorry if you heard some beeps. There's always things going around here. Apologize for that. But let's go ahead and take all of that and let's get started. This season's going to open August 28th on the road at JJ Pearce. Here's the thing about Pearce, right? Pearce has 3 consecutive wins over Wylie, but all are one-score games that really Wylie should have had. Last year, the guy that torched Wylie for 150 yards on the ground, Jeremiah Lyons, who prior to that, he was a defensive back for Pearce and played pretty well. But they put him in at running back. He graduated, right? So he's gone. And then they're going to have another new quarterback, the junior Kyler Lambert. He got 2 starts last year. Those were, I think, towards the end of the season, not against Wylie, though. When I'm looking at this Pearce team for 2026, nobody really jumps out on offense. The biggest strength on offense, as usual, is that they will use a ton of formations. Now, that variety has caused Wylie fits in the past. For defense, for Pearce, it's even worse. They're just returning 4 starters. The guy to watch out for there, defensive end Nathan Ginn. If Wylie contains him, Wylie might just go off. As we've said before, with this game at Pearce, now they're playing for the 5th consecutive time against Pearce. It's a non-district game that feels like a district game. So even though I really do want to say that Wylie ends this losing streak to Pearce at 3 with a big blowout victory, especially this season when they're playing 2 scrimmages first, so they're really going to get beat game ready. I think this game ends up being closer than we'd like. So I've got it as a win, but I've got Wylie 35, Pearce 21 to open the season. That's my sort of initial thought. Next week, Lake Highlands. This is at Lake Highlands at Wildcat Ram Stadium, Friday, September 4th. That is the Friday before Labor Day, I believe. This is going to be a tough game, let me tell you. The head coach over there, Corey Campbell, has got a 27-9 record in 4 seasons. Last year, went 9-3, 6-1 in district. They lost in the second round of the playoffs to Allen. Every season under Coach Corey Campbell, they've ended up 9-3, which of course that includes playoffs. So we're talking 8-2 regular seasons. On offense, the big question is who is going to be their quarterback and how good will he be? They lost their quarterback last year, Chuck Smith, who threw for 3,100 yards last season. But maybe it doesn't matter because they've got this running back / wide receiver, Franklin Evans Jr. He's committed to BC, Boston College. Scored 18 TDs last year. And you've got their starting wide receivers, 6'2 senior Mason Spangler, 6'4, I think he's a senior, Conrad Insay. Even though, like I said, the Wylie secondary is really good, they might have their hands full. There's going to be some early tests for the Wylie secondary against these guys. But again, we don't know who the quarterback is. Don't know. On defense, their strength is the linebackers. Senior Chris, I think it's Terrio, Theriot. I think that's Terrio. He was a defensive MVP in District 7 6A last year. And you've also got another linebacker, junior Israel Samuel. The biggest thing for Wylie, the biggest positive I can say against Lake Highlands, is that Lake Highlands will have a new quarterback, like we said, and that they lost 44 seniors, right? And then you combine that with what I think are Wiley's key position players are going to be balling on both sides, right? How this thing ends up, I think Wylie gives Lake Highlands a handful. I really do. But I also and frankly, I think if you divorce yourself from our rooting interest of the Wylie Pirates, just watching Dalen Gordon versus Franklin Evans Jr., both of those running backs, that's going to be a treat of talent, I'm telling you. But the thing is, I think ultimately Lake Highlands is just a well-oiled machine under head coach Corey Campbell. I'm just saying that they're just very well coached. Period. So I think that unfortunately I'm predicting that Lake Highlands wins a squeaker here. I got Lake Highlands 28, Wylie 24. If that happens, I'll just tell you right now, it's kind of I've said this before sometimes with certain games. If they beat Pierce, then they go into Lake Highlands and they go toe to toe with them and they lose. I'm going to be very proud, of course, that's one, but I'm going to be very impressed. Very, very impressed. And it bodes well for the rest of the season. The home opener. That is Thursday, September 10th. Remember, that is a Thursday game at Wylie ISD Stadium. That is senior night. And what senior night means is that the football seniors will be honored at that game. For those of you who are not longtime Wylie Pirate fans, you may recall when this switch happened. And the switch happened because they would usually just wait until the very last home game, which is your traditional senior night. But we had one year where they couldn't do it because of weather. So they decided, let's just get it out of the way. Let's put it here. And of course, if there's weather here, it can be rescheduled for another home game. And also, there's other teams like that Wylie Band and the Pace Setters, all of them that need to be honored for their seniors. And most of them actually do that on the final home game, right? But this is senior night for football, Thursday, September 10th, Wylie ISD Stadium, Mesquite Horn. Horn, God, they're kind of a hot mess right now. They're on their fourth coach in 6 years. Although their new coach they've just hired, Robert Boone, he did very well at Carrollton Newman Smith the past few years. But Mesquite Horn themselves, they only had 2 wins last year. They're both district wins, but they were in the district of doom. On offense, question mark is at quarterback. They're going to take their wide receiver, Kai Furch, and switch him to quarterback. He is a Harvard commit at the wide receiver position. So they're going into this season, their offense, new coach and a new quarterback, and that could be problematic, right? Even especially week 2, right? Things may not have gelled by then. Their big strength is offensive line. They've got the sophomore guard, Nehemiah Avery. He's 6'2", 295 pounds. You've got sophomore tackle, Damari Woodson, 6'2", 295 pounds. And the junior center, Chaska Martin, 6'2", 295 pounds. So basically you have 300 pound, 300 pound linemen. These are all FBS prospects. So look out. The Avery that we talked about, he started every game last year as a freshman. I mean, think about that. When was the last time a freshman played varsity offensive line for Wylie? Right. The point is, offensive line is good. And the key, I think, for Wylie D is going to be how much pressure they can get getting past these basically 300-pound linemen. Now, if they can get past them, then they may be able to cause a lot of problems for the quote-unquote new quarterback, Kai Furch. On defense, their D-line and their linebackers, they aren't as big as the O-line, especially the linebackers. We'll talk more about this when we get to week 3, but the linebackers might be the soft spot for Wylie to attack with intermediate passing routes. For me, this is a tough one to call. A lot, in my opinion, rides on whether Horn actually does go with the wide receiver Kai Furch at quarterback. Furch is fast, really fast. So the Wylie D, I mean, they might have their hands full as he's probably going to show a tendency to run out of the backfield. But you know what? I think ultimately you got the home opener. You've got the chance for a winning non-district record for the first time in forever, maybe first time ever. I like the Wylie Pirates to pull this out. I've got this Wylie 42, Mesquite Horn 30, and I like the Pirates ending that non-district schedule 2-1. And then district starts, and it starts. It doesn't start easy. Starts with the homecoming game against Saxe. That's Friday, September 18th. It's going to be a huge game for both sides, right? For very obvious reasons. But also, you've got the homecoming game aspect of it, and Saxe wants revenge for last year. Last year, the offense didn't do anything for Saxe, right? Except for when they got those turnovers and what they did with the turnovers. But they'll do better. Saxe returns their quarterback from last year with the best name ever, Christian McCaffrey, CMC, and he will be better than he was last year. And they've got 3 starters back on the offensive line. For defense, their front 7, very good, very good. I really like the defensive ends, Trindon Bennett and Zahavian Ramsey. They're both returning from last year. And you've got the junior, he's now a junior at linebacker, Willie Palomo. And as a sophomore last year, he was the defensive newcomer of the year in the district, which is really good when you consider that means that he beat out Donnie Skinner. Right? Donnie Skinner ended up first team all district safety as a sophomore, but not defensive newcomer of the year because he was edged out by Palomo. To me, Wylie, Saxe, homecoming, so much on the line to start off the district schedule. This feels like a 1-score game to me. I like Wylie to pull this out, though. I like them to pull out the homecoming win. Got Wylie 27, Saxe 20. Yeah, 27-20. The next week, they're going to go on their first road district game at Lakeview Centennial. That is another Thursday game. Thursday, September 24th. That's at HBJ, Homer B. Johnson Stadium. Now, last year, Wylie's win at Lakeview, that was its best win of the year, right? They dropped 49 on a ridiculously good defense. Now, having said that, it wasn't Lakeview at full strength because their quarterback, Dakari Jernigan, did not start, but he came in for relief in the second half. And when he did come in, he did well, right? And right now for offense for this year, I'm going to assume Jernigan's going to be in this game. He's going to play. And Wylie's going to have Fitz containing him. He's a dual threat quarterback, very good with both his legs and his arm. Now, there's a question for who else is there for their offensive skill positions. But their saving grace is they've got a tackle, Chris Uday, 6'5", 280 pounds. They've got a first team all district in lineman in Cameron May. And then you've got the Jackson State commit, center Valentine Akiti. Those 3 are going to create plenty of time and space for Jernigan. And again, like we said, he can kill you with both his legs and arms. Legs and arm. He could do a stiff arm too, so watch out. Even if they don't have a solid wide receiver, they'll just do what they did last year. They'll bring in their defensive end, King Thibodeau, to play wide receiver, and if you recall last year's game, Wylie at Lakeview Centennial, Thibodeau had an offensive receiving touchdown against Wylie, and I think it was thrown from Jernigan. Right? But the key for Lakeview is their D. And my notes here, they stacked upon stacked. Right? You've got the 6'3", 255-pound King Thibodeau up front, along with the 6 foot, 230-pound defensive end Jackson Wilson. Both defensive ends, both 3-star recruits. Linebackers, not as stacked, but the defensive backs, big time, big time. Your starting corners are your 4-star recruit Montre Jackson, and the other side is Carson Wilson. He is committed to North Dakota State, which is now FBS, right? They just joined the Mountain West, FBS. The key for last year's game was Dalen Gordon, because even if Jackson and Wilson have Fitz guarding him, right? If he lines up in wide receiver position, if you've got DG in the slot, or you've got him out of the backfield, it's possible for Wylie to neutralize those the studs on the defensive line and the corners. Now, here's the thing about this game. If Wylie drops 49 on them, yeah, Wylie's winning for sure. I just don't think it happens, right? And I think especially with a healthy Dakari Jernigan back for Lakeview Centennial, and he's able to make sure they move the ball and not punt as much, right? Which is what happened last year's game. They just kept giving possessions back to Wylie, and Wylie cashed in. This is a big bubble game, the first of maybe two big bubble games for me. By bubble, I mean it's really hard to predict. You know, frankly, I just don't think this team's going to have a 10-0 season or a 9-1. We got in trouble basically last year when we predicted that, even though I still believe last year should have gone 10-0 or 9-1. I think that to win every single regular season game or even just to be a one-loss team is very tough. It is tough. And even for one of the better Wiley rosters in years, I just don't think it's going to happen. And sadly, I'm going to put this down as an L. And that's going to be very reminiscent of the 2022 season, where the game at Lakeview that year was really the only blemish other than Wiley East. So I've got that game at Lakeview Centennial 30, Wiley 24. And we get a bye week, and then we have the big Civil War game. The Civil War, Wiley's on the home side, Friday, October 9th. Thing about the Civil War game is you really can't do it justice to talk at this stage. But you know the deal. If you've been listening long enough, you're watching the games, you know the deal. Wiley East has a great coaching staff, but there's a question mark of how the new offensive coordinator is going to work and gel in the team. They've lost some big talent. Victor Young looks like he's going to start at quarterback, sophomore. So it's another new quarterback. It's the third quarterback in 3 years for Wiley East. And an offense, again, I think their offense is going to run through Jonathan Udabor, the junior running back, absolute beast. He's got so much Marshawn Lynch to his game, it's not even funny. I love him, love him. Now, as far as wide receivers, Amarian Porter graduated, but you've got his brother, 6'3", Amir Porter. He's going to cause fits for this big secondary. In fact, I think we talked last year that we couldn't wait to see the matchup between Marion Porter and Grandy or Strickland. I'm really looking forward to seeing for this Wiley team Amir Porter matched up against Mathis, Strickland, or Grandy. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see. I also like Victor Ekpa, wide receiver too. He's pretty fast, pretty fast. And one of the biggest strengths for Wiley East on the offense is their offensive line. My God, I saw a picture of them in the summer, and all five starters are huge monsters, right? And I think one of the keys for the Wiley defense is going to be winning that line of scrimmage battle. Now, defense for Wiley East, that might be where they have some problems. They've only have three starters back. But I like all three, right? Especially two I'm going to mention here. The safety, Kyle Jarvis, and cornerback Charles Perry. This is just really tough. This is really tough. And, I can understand why people would go one way or the other. But there's a couple of things here. One is, I think you can make the case that that the talent that Wiley has unmasked, at least for this season, is theoretically enough to finally get over the hump and beat Wiley East. I also like the idea of, Private Craig watching from above and this team being inspired to win it for him. Private Craig, all 4 years of high school, he never saw Wiley beat Wiley East, and I'm not predicting East to win five in a row. I just can't do it. I cannot pick them to win five in a row over Wiley. That's just insane, even with the coaching staff disparity. If Wiley East wins a fifth consecutive game over Wiley, well then, Dr. Spicer, you know what to do, even though you won't do it, but you know what to do. I've got Wiley winning this. Wiley 38, Wiley East 28. First Civil War win since 2014. And first in 5 tries when they're both in 6A. Coming off of that, what I think is going to be a big win, you've got game at Garland, at Williams Stadium, Garland. That's going to be Thursday, October 15th. That is during fall break. We have a special start time of 5:30. Now, if you recall last year's game, we had what we keep saying is a big mistake from the coaching staff, which was you had Blake out and you didn't start the backup quarterback, Mason Griner. Hopefully, that's just not an issue this season. Garland themselves, they only returned 6 starters. A big question mark for Garland is who plays quarterback. Last year, you had Carlos Moica, but he moved to Daytona Beach, Florida. Good for him. Good for him. I don't know how you guys feel about, whether you'd want to live in Garland, Texas or Daytona Beach, Florida. I think I would like Daytona Beach more, but I do think there's more humidity there, and I don't like the humidity. But again, we don't know who's going to play quarterback. For running back, I like they're going to have Sam Marshall at running back. I like him. They're going to have a couple of two-way guys. I think they're going to both play receiver. Taj Traore and Jaden Satchel. On defense, honestly, nobody sticks out besides those two-way guys, Traore and Satchel. I think as long as Blake is healthy, and if for some reason he's not, that an actual quarterback starts at quarterback. I think Wylie comfortably wins this. I've got Wylie 38, Garland 17. The next week, back at home, that is Friday, October 23rd. That is Future Pirate Night. North Garland, playing North Garland, Wylie ISD Stadium. Too early to say this now, but Future Pirate Night, get there early because the parking lot gets packed full with the parents of the elementary kiddos. We have two big stories really for North Garland, right? One is a big shocker, which is Christian Hampton, who we all assumed would be the starting quarterback all 4 years. He moved. He's now at Berkner. And we have no clue who's playing quarterback. And that's going to make a huge difference, right? The other thing is, of course, DeMarcus Mathis Jr., right? He was the leader on defense for North Garland, and now he's in Wylie and playing for Wylie. No matter what, all eyes are going to be on their fast as hell wide receiver Juju Minor. If Wylie shuts him down, North Garland might not be able to score. Now, they did have a first team all district running back, Jeremiah Denmark, but he didn't have a single carry against Wylie. And I don't know, I just wasn't that impressed with him. I don't know how he ended up first team all district running back, but okay, he's the guy. On defense, really nobody sticks out, especially because you've got Mathis now gone. I think Wylie makes up for last year's very close game with a blowout win here. I've got Wylie 48, North Garland 21. And that brings us to a huge game. Well, maybe the last big game of the regular season for the Pirates, the final home game against Rowlett. That's Friday, October 30th. What's really nice about this is it's not Halloween. Halloween will be the next day, so this doesn't interfere with that, which is really nice. I'm sure a lot of you appreciate that. There's a lot of optimism around Rowlett. A lot, right? Last year, of course, they made the playoffs. They beat Wylie on a last minute touchdown. And frankly, they had Wylie East dead to rights. They had like a 16-point lead in with like 5 minutes to go, and they blew it. And East scored the game winning come from behind touchdown on the very last play. Now, on offense, their quarterback, Sam Loera, he's back. Still going to be a solid dual threat. And then they've got a three-headed skill. They've got, three-headed skill position monsters in Braxton Moore. He also plays corner, so look out for that. Got Ryan Hamilton, a 6'4" wide receiver, and also Micah Pearson. Defense, I think, is the bigger question mark for Rowlett. But who I really like, let me give you two names here. Defensive end Xavier Beal, 6'3", 220 pounds, and Collie Smith at linebacker. I think Rowlett's biggest weakness is the offensive line. Right? So if Wylie can penetrate that offensive line and spy Loera, because Loera, he'll run, right? So if you get through, just getting through is not good enough. You're going to have to run around. But if you can penetrate, you can spy, Wylie can win this. I think we're going to have a lot of pundits that have Rowlett winning this game, and maybe even some that have him winning the district, which is crazy. But I like Wylie in a revenge game win. I've got Wylie 33, Rowlett 24. And finally, that brings us to the final game of the regular season. South Garland, that is at Homer B. Johnson Stadium, Friday, November 6th. Best thing I can say about South Garland is that I like the coach, Antoine Hobbs. He's a South Garland alum. I think when he was there, that was like when they would go to the playoffs every single year, which it's hard to believe now, right? The program's been so decimated, especially because of free transferability in the Garland district, that you forget that South Garland was actually good. In the 2000s, they were good. They were making the playoffs year in and year out. Solid, solid team. Things just kind of fell apart, and especially I think because of free transferability within the district. Coach Hobbs, he's a former Duncanville assistant coach. We mentioned that last year. This is his second season. I can't help but root for the guy. Good guy. Good guy, smart coach. Good coach. Offense, that's always where South Garland struggles. We don't even know who's playing quarterback yet. As far as running back, Romeo White's going to be the starting running back. He's fast. I mean, really fast. Now, is he a good running back? Well, I think that remains to be seen this season. Defense, that's where South Garland gets better, at least with the corners. Got the two-way player, Marky Cobb, so he'll play wide receiver as well. And then you've got the returning sophomore corner, Damian Brown, which of course that means he started. He actually started as a freshman. So I think that South Garland makes strides this year in terms of their overall season, but not against Wylie. The only saving grace for South Garland is that if all goes well, this might be a meaningless game for Wylie, in a good way, right? And one thing we've always said about the Wylie coaching staff, as opposed to other coaching staffs, the Wylie coaching staff is very classy. Don't expect them to run up the score, unless, of course, they needed to, right? If there was they needed to run it up for a tiebreaker, then they would. But otherwise, they're not going to run it up on South Garland. So what I think that means is I think Wylie wins this, but score's not going to look like a blowout because this game is going to be at least one half, if not more, of garbage time, right? Where garbage time is not, I don't mean that as a pejorative, but garbage time just means that you have at least Wylie's playing backups. South Garland might be playing their starters. Wylie's playing their second team. So it's a little bit of an unfair fight for the Wylie second team, but at least they get to play, they get playing time, that's great. But I expect that South Garland is going to put up points after the game's out of hand. I've got Wylie 47, South Garland 28. So what that means, if you add that all up, if you're keeping score at home, I'm being bullish, but not bullish to the extreme on this 2026 Pirate team. I've got them with an overall 8-2 record, with their only blemishes being at Lakeview Centennial and at Lake Highlands. And I've got them at 6-1 in district, which of course the only district loss would be Lakeview Centennial. And I think that what they're gunning for is a district championship, and I'm predicting that they win a district championship over Wylie East, who I think will also end up with a 6-1 district record. But Wylie will take it on the head-to-head. That brings us to playoffs, right? And so I'm predicting that they're winning a district, so they're getting a home playoff game. It's going to be against 10-6A school. Who knows who that could be? It could be Rockwall Heath, like East had to deal with last year. But it's too early to say how that's going to go. But like East by district with Rockwall Heath, I hate to say it, but it could get ugly for the Pirates fast. And it sucks because it'd be the first home playoff game for the Pirates since 2019. But like that 2019 home playoff game against Prosper, you're going to have a really good football team come into your house. You're going to have a team very likely to be better than anybody you're playing. I would venture to say that whoever comes in at D1 second seed is better than even Lake Highlands, right? Better than Wylie East. Definitely better than Pearce. Better than Saxe. So you're going to have this amazing team coming in, and it's going to be real tough. And very likely, my dream, if you recall, I've said this in years past, I just want to see a year where Wylie wins a district title and a by-district title, right? And I believe in the entire Max Preps era of Wily Pirate football. By Max Preps era, I mean 2004 is when Max Preps started keeping track of things. That they never had a district championship and a by-district championship. They had plenty of by-district championships, especially when they were at lower levels, and even when they went to the state title game, but they didn't combine it with a district championship. Even when they went to the state title game, they did not win their district. They were just underneath. I think they were second place. And the times they won district, they didn't win by district, right? And they haven't won many district titles, but we said 2019 against Prosper, and that game was kind of over before it started. Even if Wylie pulls out a miracle in the by district round, the second round game is going to be against 11-6A, the District of Doom's D1 one seed. Just likely Duncanville, right? Could be someone else, but likely Duncanville. And that's as close as you can get to a guaranteed loss, right? Now, Wylie will probably score garbage time points this season as compared to the 2022 second round game against Duncanville where they got shut out. But really, if you play Duncanville, if you're Wylie and you get to them and you're playing them in the playoffs, the question is how long can you hang? That's the question. If it's even remotely close after one half or even one quarter, that's a win. And if you can hang around the entire game, that's the stuff of legends, right? That's the kind of thing that people who cover high school football at a broader level, like to cover all of DFW high school football, they cover the entire state, cover the entire country, they take notice and say, "Oh wow, Wylie hung in there," and you actually earn that respect. That I feel like Wylie doesn't get respect from any of those people, right? But you hang around against Duncanville, then you'll earn their respect. You do have a contingency of people that think Waxahachie is going to actually finish over Duncanville for D11. If that happens, then you slot in Waxahachie there, which would mean Waxahachie beat Duncanville, which that's already kind of crazy, but possible. It's happened before. I'd tell you right now, Wylie Pirates, I'd still be scared to face that 2026 Waxahachie team. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now. A lot of talk right now about how good this Waxahachie team could be. But again, if you get that far, you're winning a district, you're beating a very, very good 10-6A team in the by-district round, and you're getting there. I mean, it's all roses at that point. It's all roses. So there you have it. That's the season preview. Like we said, things can adjust. We may have a different thought on some of these teams as we move on because we see their play for a few weeks and they're a lot better than we thought they'd be, or a lot worse. So things can change for sure. And then there's injuries, right? Like we said, the Lakeview Centennial game last year was marred by big injury to Lakeview Centennial with their quarterback. So there's a lot of things in flux, but these are just my thoughts right now based on kind of my understanding of the 2026 Pirates right now without understanding everything. And just kind of the things that we know right now and the thoughts we have regarding all of their opponents this year. So there you have it. I like to think 8-2. If they really win 8 regular season games, I mean that's obviously going to be the best season in the Coach Carter era. And it's also going to be a statement, right? It's going to be a statement that, you know, that Wylie can actually do better than its 4, 5, 6, 7 kind of win seasons. That it can really be upper echelon in terms of this district, right? If you put them in a more difficult district, who knows? But we can only talk about this team in terms of 9-6A, and you know, there was a time that Wylie was considered the cream of the crop of 9-6A. They are not, right? They are now the redheaded stepchild to Wylie East. So the question is now can they finally get that monkey off their back this year? And if they can, yeah, they can get to 8 wins. Maybe they can get to more. Maybe. Maybe this team is even better than I think, right? And I'm bullish. Maybe they're a lot better, but they're going to have to prove it on the field. And this coaching staff is going to have to look into themselves, reflect inwards, and say, we need to be better, right? We need to be better. There's going to be times where we need to be more aggressive in game. You know, we're just going to need to be better. Now we'll talk more next week as we just talk about just the Pierce game. So we'll talk more about that and keys to the game and things like that. So keep an eye out for that. That's the next episode. I'm also expecting that next week is when I'm going to drop a first video. I may just record it this week at some point and then drop it next week. But look for that on the YouTube channel. But if you got any thoughts, feedback, questions, let me know. I've got my email in the show notes. You can also leave a comment on the YouTube page. You can leave comments on our Facebook page or our Facebook Messenger, whatever you like. Go ahead, leave some feedback, leave comments. We will read them. If you leave something that's worth reading and readable, then we'll definitely read it next week. But once again, this has been the season preview for Wylie Football Weekly, the only podcast dedicated to your Wylie Pirates varsity football team. I am your host, the one and only Wylie super fan Pappy, saying, AHMO, baby, AHMO.